I never expected that the phone call I was about to receive would shatter everything. "Sarah, I need your help. I'm in labor." It was my sister, Emily. The same sister who had just destroyed my life. She had been sleeping with my husband, and now, she was pregnant with his child. I stared at my phone, my hand trembling. It was like a sick joke. Could she really be asking for my help now? I should have ignored it. I should have just let her suffer. But no, I'm a doctor. I'm her sister. I couldn't leave her in this state, not when she needed me most. I quickly grabbed my things, my mind racing with questions. How could I possibly help her after everything she'd done to me? How could I stand there and pretend everything was fine? But I knew one thing for sure, the next few hours would change everything. And I wouldn't leave her side. Not yet. I threw on my coat and rushed out the door. The air outside was cold and sharp, cutting through my skin as I walked briskly to the car. I had so many emotions running through me, but there was one thing that burned the most: betrayal. I kept thinking about my husband, Mark, how we had built this life together, how we were supposed to trust each other, and how he had violated that trust in the worst way imaginable. But worse still, Emily, my own sister, had done the unthinkable. I couldn't even begin to process it. The ride to the hospital was a blur. I didn't remember the drive, the stoplights, or the people I passed along the way. All I could think about was the phone call, the realization that Emily was carrying Mark's child. A child she had no right to, no business having, and yet there she was, asking me to help her bring it into the world. My mind flashed back to the days when things were normal. When Mark and I would lie in bed and talk about our future. How we were going to raise a family, go on vacations, grow old together. And now? Now I was about to help my sister give birth to the product of the very man who had betrayed me. When I arrived at the hospital, I was in autopilot mode. I barely acknowledged the nurses who greeted me as I rushed through the doors. I knew exactly where to go. Emily was in room 204, just like the last time we'd been there for her checkup. But this time everything was different. I pushed open the door. There she was, lying in bed, her face twisted in pain. But beneath that, I saw something else. Guilt. She looked up at me, and I could tell that she didn't know how to feel. Should she be scared? Relieved? Would I be able to help her after everything she had done? I wasn't sure. But I had no choice. I was here now, and I couldn't just walk away. "Sarah." Her voice cracked as she spoke my name. "Please help me." She seemed so vulnerable. So unlike the sister I had once known. But I couldn't let that fool me. She had hurt me beyond repair. I couldn't let her think everything was fine, that I had forgiven her. Not yet. "You ruined everything, Emily," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "Everything. Do you even realize that?" She winced, but didn't respond. The silence between us felt like an abyss. I stepped closer to her, not sure if I should touch her or just stand back. "You betrayed me. You ruined my family." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "You think I can just forget that?" Emily's face softened, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She had no words. She just stared at me, her breathing shallow, trying to hold herself together. She was holding it together for the baby, for the moment when she could bring new life into the world. But it wasn't just any life, it was Mark's life, and it was her betrayal of me. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me." But I couldn't believe her. I couldn't believe anything she said anymore. I stood there, watching her, not knowing what to do next. My mind was racing. How was I supposed to help her when everything I was feeling inside screamed at me to walk away? To just leave her to deal with the consequences of her actions. But no. I was a professional. And despite everything she had done to me, I couldn't turn my back on her now. "Just breathe," I said, trying to force myself to calm down. trying to put my emotions aside and focus on what needed to be done. She nodded, her face contorting in pain. "I'm scared," she whispered. And I was too. But not for the same reasons. The hours seemed to stretch on forever. The contractions came harder, faster, and Emily was doing everything she could to push through. As I watched her, I couldn't help but think about the future. This child, this baby, was going to be a constant reminder of the lies, the betrayal, the hurt. It was going to be a part of my life forever, whether I wanted it or not. Finally, the moment came. Emily pushed, and I saw the baby's head. It was happening so quickly. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching from outside my body. I knew I had to act, I had to deliver the baby, but my mind wasn't fully engaged. I told Emily to push again, and with one final, forceful effort, the baby was born. I held the child in my hands, tiny and helpless, completely innocent of the chaos that had led to this moment. For a second, everything seemed to stop. The room was silent except for the soft cries of the newborn. I could feel my heart racing, but I couldn't process what had just happened. I handed the baby to Emily, who looked at it with a mixture of awe and fear. "It's a girl," she whispered. "Congratulations," I said flatly, my voice colder than I intended. I couldn't bring myself to care about this child, not when it was born out of betrayal. I stepped back, my hands trembling. I was done. I had done my part. I had brought her into the world. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just let a piece of my soul slip away. As I stood there, watching Emily hold the child, I couldn't help but think about the future. My future. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. I could feel the anger and hurt surging within me, but I knew I had to hold it in. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. Emily looked up at me, her eyes full of guilt. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen." But it didn't matter. Nothing she said would ever be enough. I nodded and walked toward the door. I wasn't ready to forgive her. I wasn't ready to move on. But I would be. And when I was ready, Emily and Mark would finally pay. The days after the birth were a blur of hospital visits and hollow smiles. Every time I saw Emily holding that child, I felt the bitterness in my chest grow stronger. I couldn't escape it. Every time she looked at me with that apologetic gaze, I felt like I was suffocating. The betrayal was never far from my mind. But I couldn't let it consume me. Not yet. I had to figure out what to do. I couldn't let them both get away with this. I couldn't just go on pretending like everything was fine. I wasn't that weak. I had to plan my next move carefully. Emily continued to act as if nothing had changed between us. But I could see through her. The guilt was written all over her face, no matter how much she tried to hide it. And then there was Mark. Every time I looked at him, I wanted to scream. But I kept my cool, holding it all in, waiting for the right moment. That moment came when I got a text from Emily, asking me to meet her. It was the first time she had reached out to me since the birth, and my heart sank when I saw the message. I knew what she wanted. She probably thought she could fix things, like it was all just a misunderstanding, like I could forgive her. But I wasn't ready for that. I agreed to meet her, but I had no intention of forgiving her. I was done with playing the role of the saint. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about me. And if I didn't take control now, I might lose everything. I sat in the cafe, my fingers tapping nervously on the table, waiting for her to arrive. When she walked in, I saw the same guilty expression, the same false hope in her eyes. She looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Sarah," she said, her voice shaking. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know how to make it right. But I want to try." I looked at her, my jaw clenched. "Try? It's too late for that, Emily." She flinched at my words, but I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything. "Not anymore. You really think you can just waltz back into my life and fix this?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. You think I'm just going to forgive you because you're sorry? She reached out, her hand trembling. No, I stopped her, holding up my hand. Don't. Don't try to justify this. You slept with my husband. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now you want me to help you feel better about it? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything. How she had destroyed me, how she had torn apart my family. And the child she had brought into this world, the child that would always remind me of what she had done. I know I can't undo what happened, she whispered. But please, Sarah. You're my sister. I love you. And I'm sorry. I wanted to say something, anything to make it stop. To make her go away and leave me in peace. But the anger inside me was too strong. Sorry doesn't cut it, Emily. Not anymore. She sat back, defeated. The guilt was written all over her face. But I didn't care. She had done this to herself. So what do you want? She asked quietly. I leaned in, my eyes cold and unfeeling. I want you to leave. I want you to stay away from my family. And I want you to remember what you did every single day. Her lips trembled as she wiped away her tears. But I wasn't done. You think I can forget this? You think I'm just going to go back to the way things were? I shook my head. No. This is far from over. You may have gotten what you wanted for now, but there's a price to pay. Emily looked at me, her expression filled with confusion and fear. What do you mean? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You'll find out soon enough. I left her there, sitting alone at the table, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. But that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The plan was already in motion. I had everything I needed, proof of her lies, proof of everything. I just had to wait for the right time to strike. But as I walked out of the cafe, something nagged at me. Something wasn't right. I had all the power, but there was still a feeling in the pit of my stomach that told me I wasn't in control just yet. The trap had been set, but I knew that Emily wouldn't go down without a fight. And I had no intention of backing down. I woke up the next morning with the same suffocating feeling in my chest. The events of yesterday played over and over in my mind, but now, I couldn't shake the unease. Emily hadn't said much, but I knew she was hiding something, something I hadn't yet uncovered. The look in her eyes, the way she kept avoiding certain topics, told me there was more to the story. I couldn't let my guard down. I couldn't afford to. I had been betrayed in the worst way possible by the people I trusted most, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. My mind raced as I got dressed, preparing for another day of work. But even at the hospital, I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting back to Emily's words, "You'll find out soon enough." It was almost like she was daring me to uncover something. But what could it be? What was she hiding? As the day dragged on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break. Something big. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, just waiting for the world to come crashing down. When I got home that evening, Mark was waiting for me. I could tell by the look in his eyes that he knew something was off. He knew I was angry, he could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. But he didn't say anything. He just stood there, waiting for me to speak first. I met with Emily today, I said, my voice low and sharp. You know what she said to me? Mark didn't flinch, but I saw the flash of fear in his eyes. I don't want to hear it, Sarah. I stepped forward, my fists clenched at my sides. You don't get to tell me that, Mark. You don't get to control this anymore. Not after what you did. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. You slept with my sister, Mark. You ruined everything. And I'm done pretending I can just forgive you. His face twisted in guilt. I know, Sarah. I'm sorry. I laughed bitterly. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't change anything. His voice shook as he took a step closer to me. What do you want me to do, Sarah? What can I do to fix this? I stepped back, glaring at him. You can start by staying the hell out of my life. You've done enough damage already. Mark's face fell, but I didn't care. His apologies meant nothing to me anymore. He had crossed the line, and now, there was no coming back from it. I could see the desperation in his eyes, but there was nothing he could say to undo the hurt he had caused. Nothing could erase the fact that my own sister had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. But that wasn't all. There was still something lurking beneath the surface. Something I hadn't figured out yet. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a darker secret hiding in the shadows. I had to find it. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was consumed by it. I had to take control. I couldn't let them both get away with this. They thought they were untouchable, but I had a plan. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't going to just sit back and let them ruin my life. I was going to make them pay for what they had done to me. At work, I started digging. I knew Mark's business associates, his colleagues, people who could help me find the dirt I needed. I started putting the pieces together. The more I uncovered, the clearer the picture became. But then, something unexpected happened. A text from Emily. I need to see you, it said. I stared at the screen for a long time before I finally decided to respond. Why? She didn't reply for hours. Then, when I thought I had been left hanging, her message came through. I have something to tell you. I felt a surge of anger. What could you possibly have to say that would make any of this better? I typed, my hands shaking. The reply came almost instantly. Meet me at the park. I'll tell you everything. I stared at the message, a feeling of dread creeping up my spine. What was she planning now? I couldn't let her control this. But I knew I had to go. I needed to know what she was hiding. When I arrived at the park, Emily was sitting on a bench, her back to me. She didn't hear me approach. For a moment, I just watched her. She looked small, fragile, like a shell of the woman I had once known. Emily, I called out. She turned around, her face pale and drawn. Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, waiting for her to explain herself. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. But I didn't know what else to do. I crossed my arms. Just tell me what's going on, Emily. No more lies. She looked down at her hands, her voice trembling. I never meant for it to happen. But when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know who the father was. I took a step closer. What do you mean? You didn't know? She nodded. I had an affair with someone else before I knew about Mark. I didn't know if it was his baby or someone else's. My heart stopped. What was she saying? Was she really telling me that Mark might not even be the father of her child? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. You've got to be kidding me. I'm not, she whispered. That's why I've been so scared to tell you. I didn't want you to hate me even more. I could barely process what she was saying. My world had just shifted yet again. The child she had brought into this world, was it really Mark's? Or was there more to the story? The betrayal was deeper than I had thought. I stood there in the park, staring at Emily, my mind spinning. The world felt like it was slowly unraveling in front of me. You've got to be kidding me, I said, my voice hoarse. I wish I were, Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But it's true, Sarah. I don't know who the father is. I tried to process her words, but they wouldn't land. The child she had carried for 9 months, was it even Mark's? The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, it all seemed so much worse than I could have imagined. And Mark, does he know this? I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. Emily shook her head. No. I couldn't tell him. Not after everything. Not after what we've done. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I pushed it down. There was too much to lose now. I needed to think. I needed to plan. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was bigger. What are you going to do? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. She looked at me, her eyes full of fear. I don't know what to do, Sarah. I've been carrying this secret for so long, I don't know who to trust anymore. But I swear, I never wanted this to happen. Neither did I muttered. The words came out cold and bitter. I took a deep breath, trying to clear the fog in my mind. Everything was spinning out of control. The reality of what Emily had just told me was sinking in, and I was overwhelmed. She had been hiding this from me, and now it seemed like I had no one to trust. You have to tell him, Emily, I said. My voice was firm, but my insides were twisted. If you don't tell Mark the truth, I will. Her eyes widened in panic. No, Sarah. Please don't. If you do that, everything will fall apart. I'll lose him. I'll lose everything. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. You've already lost everything, Emily. You just don't realize it yet. The silence between us was deafening. We both knew what was at stake. But I was tired. Tired of playing this game of lies and deceit. I'm done with this, Emily, I said, my voice low. You fix it. You tell him the truth, or I will. But know this, I won't protect you anymore. I won't cover for you. I turned and started walking away. I didn't wait for her response. I couldn't. The weight of everything that had happened was too much, and I needed to get out of there before I lost control. The next few days were a blur. I kept waiting for Emily to come to her senses, for her to do the right thing, but she didn't. Instead, she avoided me. She didn't pick up my calls. She didn't answer my messages. And I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she had been lying to me all along. I didn't trust her anymore. Not fully. I couldn't. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to know for sure. I had to get the truth, even if it meant hurting everyone in the process. So I made a decision. I was going to take matters into my own hands. I called Mark, my heart racing as I dialed his number. When he answered, I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Sarah? What's going on? I need to talk to you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We need to meet. There are things you don't know. Things you need to hear. There was a long pause before he responded. I don't know if I can do this, Sarah. I'm trying to fix things, but you won't let me. Meet me, Mark, I demanded. Now. When we met, I could tell something was off. Mark's eyes were tired, filled with regret and confusion. But I didn't care about his apologies anymore. I didn't care about his guilt. Sarah, what is it? He asked, his voice pleading. What do you need from me? I stared at him, my eyes cold. I need the truth, Mark. The whole truth. He shifted uncomfortably, his hands fidgeting in his lap. What are you talking about? I leaned forward, my voice quiet but full of accusation. About Emily. About her pregnancy. Is it yours, or is it someone else's? The words hit him like a punch. I watched his face drain of color as the weight of my question settled in. What do you mean, someone else's? He stammered. I thought. I cut him off. I thought so too, but Emily told me something different. She said she didn't know who the father was. Mark's eyes widened, his mouth opening and closing as if he couldn't find the words. No. No, that can't be. I stood up, pacing the room. You don't know what to say now, do you, Mark? You've been lying to me, just like Emily has. You've been living a lie for so long, you don't even know what the truth is anymore. Sarah, please, just let me explain, he pleaded, reaching out to grab my arm. but I yanked it away. No. You don't get to explain. Not anymore. His eyes were full of panic, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. He had destroyed everything. He had destroyed us. And I wasn't about to let him manipulate me into forgiving him again. I'm done with this, Mark, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You've lost me. And you've lost everything else, too. I turned and walked out of the room without another word. I couldn't go back. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. The truth had been exposed, and there was no hiding from it now. But as I walked away from Mark, my mind began to race. Emily's lies, her deceit, the way she had dragged me into this mess, it all had to come to an end. And I was going to make sure it did. The days that followed were a whirlwind of decisions, tension, and anger. I couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control, but at the same time, I knew there was no turning back. I had exposed Mark's lies, and now I had to deal with the fallout. But there was still one piece of the puzzle left, Emily. I couldn't avoid her forever. She was family, and no matter how much she had betrayed me, the weight of blood couldn't be ignored. The problem was, I didn't know if I was ready to hear what she had to say. What if her story wasn't just about the affair? What if there was more to it? That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the phone in my hands. It felt like the calm before the storm. Emily hadn't reached out to me since our last conversation, and I didn't know if I should be relieved or scared. Then, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. My heart skipped a beat as I answered. Sarah? It was Emily. Her voice was strained, almost broken. I need to see you, she said quietly. We need to talk. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to refuse. I wanted to scream at her, tell her to stay away from me, but I knew I couldn't. I had to face this. I had to face the woman who had shattered everything I held dear. Where? I asked, my voice flat. Meet me at the old cafe. Please, Sarah. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I need you to hear me out. I agreed, feeling my stomach twist into knots. I didn't know what she was going to say, but I knew it was going to change everything. When I walked into the cafe, I saw Emily sitting at a corner table, her head down, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile almost, as if the weight of her actions had crushed her. But I couldn't let myself feel sorry for her. Not now. Not yet. She looked up when I sat down across from her, her eyes swollen from crying. Sarah. I know you hate me, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I don't blame you for that. But I need to explain everything. I need you to understand why I did it. I crossed my arms, my gaze cold. There's no excuse for what you did, Emily. You slept with my husband. You destroyed my family. She winced at my words, but nodded. I know. And I regret it every day. But I didn't start it like that. It wasn't supposed to happen. I raised an eyebrow, not buying it for a second. How is it that you can even sit there, looking me in the eye, and tell me you didn't mean it? You knew what you were doing. Emily lowered her eyes, her voice breaking. I never meant to hurt you, Sarah. I swear. But the affair, it wasn't just about Mark. It was about me, too. I leaned forward, my anger boiling over. What do you mean, it was about you? This isn't about you, Emily. This is about what you did to me. She took a shaky breath and looked up, her eyes filled with guilt. I wasn't happy, Sarah. With myself, with my life. And when I started talking to Mark, it felt like someone actually saw me. It felt good to be wanted again. I stared at her in disbelief. So, you thought sleeping with my husband would make you feel better about yourself? I know it sounds insane, but it wasn't about him at first, Emily said, her voice trembling. It was about me feeling invisible. I wanted to feel something, anything. And I didn't realize what I was doing until it was too late. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her she was selfish and cruel, but there was another part of me that almost understood. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my composure. And now? What are you going to do now, Emily? You've ruined everything. She looked down at the table, her voice barely audible. I don't know. I don't know how to fix this. But I know I need to tell Mark the truth. I need to tell him that I don't know if the baby's his. I was too scared to tell him before, but I can't live with this lie anymore. My breath caught in my throat. I had suspected as much, but hearing it out loud made everything feel more real. The child that Emily had brought into this world, was it Mark's? Or was she carrying someone else's child, a child that had nothing to do with my betrayal? You're right, I said quietly, my voice steady. You need to tell him. You need to stop lying to him. And to yourself. Emily nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I will. I don't want to lose everything, Sarah. I don't want to lose him. But I know I have to tell him the truth. I looked at her, my anger slowly dissipating. I didn't know what to feel anymore. But one thing was clear, I couldn't keep carrying this weight. I couldn't let Emily destroy everything I had built. I'll give you the chance to make things right, I said, my voice cold but resolute. But don't think for a second that you're off the hook. You have to face the consequences of your actions. And so does Mark. She nodded, her tears falling freely now. I will, Sarah. I'll make it right. I promise. I stood up, my heart heavy with everything that had happened. Make it right, Emily. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a way to fix the damage you've done. But you have to do it yourself. I walked out of the cafe, my mind racing with everything Emily had just said. I didn't know if I believed her. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let this go. The truth was out there now. And I was going to make sure that both Emily and Mark paid for what they had done. The days that followed were filled with nothing but silence. Emily hadn't contacted me again, and neither had Mark. I could feel the tension in the air every time I walked into the house, but neither of them dared to speak. I was waiting for the inevitable, the confrontation, the fallout, the moment when everything would come crashing down. I just didn't know when it would happen. But I knew it would. And when it did, I would be ready. I kept my distance from both of them, letting the anger simmer just below the surface. I had done everything I could to hold my composure, but I knew I couldn't stay calm forever. They had destroyed my trust, my family, and they were going to pay for it. It was the evening when I finally got the call I'd been waiting for, Mark. Sarah, we need to talk, he said, his voice tense. I could hear the strain in his words, the desperation to fix things. But I wasn't interested in his apologies anymore. I was past that point. You want to talk? I said, my voice cool and emotionless. Then tell me, Mark. Tell me everything. The truth. All of it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I don't know what you mean, he finally muttered. I'm trying, Sarah. I'm trying to make things right. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Trying? I nearly screamed. You think trying is enough after everything you've done? After sleeping with my sister? After everything you lied about? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the anger was overwhelming. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the years of lies, the years of pretending that everything was fine while he destroyed my life behind my back. Mark, I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said, my voice low but firm. And the truth is, I don't think I can ever forgive you. Not for what you've done. Not for what you've taken from me. I hung up before he could respond. The phone call had been everything I needed, it confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't sorry. He didn't understand the damage he had caused. He just wanted things to go back to the way they were, as if his betrayal was something I could just forgive and forget. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to let him think he could walk back into my life as if nothing had changed. No, this was bigger than that. The next morning, I decided I was done waiting for Emily to come clean. I wasn't going to let her ruin me any longer. I walked into her apartment, not even bothering to knock. When she saw me, she looked surprised but quickly composed herself. "I thought we were done with this, Sarah," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I thought we were giving each other space. I didn't waste any time with pleasantries." "It's time, Emily," I said, my voice hard. "It's time for you to tell Mark the truth. It's time for him to know that you're not the only one who's been lying." Her eyes widened in confusion. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos, the ones I had taken from a private meeting I had arranged with someone close to Mark's business. I had found out things I wasn't supposed to know, things Mark had tried to keep hidden. "You think you're the only one with secrets?" I asked, my voice cold. "You think I don't know what's been going on behind closed doors? You think I haven't figured out the bigger picture?" Her face drained of color as she took in the photos. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter," I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. "What matters is that you tell him. You tell Mark everything, or I will. And when I do, there's no coming back from it." She shook her head, the tears streaming down her face. "Please, Sarah. I don't know what to do. I don't want to lose him." I stepped closer, my voice hard as steel. "You already have, Emily. You lost him the moment you decided to sleep with my husband. You lost him when you chose betrayal over family. And now, you have to live with that. The only question is, are you going to tell him the truth, or am I going to have to do it for you?" Her shoulders sagged in defeat. She knew there was no way out of this. She had pushed me to the limit, and now there was no escaping the consequences of her actions. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't need to. I knew what would happen next. The truth would come out. And when it did, everything would change. That evening, Mark came to me again, his face pale and drawn. He didn't say a word at first, just stood there, looking at me with those same desperate eyes. "You told her, didn't you?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. "Sarah," he whispered, stepping closer to me. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." I took a step back, shaking my head. "You don't get to say that anymore, Mark. You don't get to say anything." His face crumpled as he realized the truth had come out. He was no longer in control of the situation. He had lost me, and there was nothing he could do to fix it. The silence between us was suffocating. He didn't know how to fix things, and I didn't know if I wanted him to. But one thing was certain, things would never be the same again. The days that followed were filled with the heavy silence of a broken home. Mark, now fully aware that the walls were closing in around him, tried desperately to repair the damage. But there was no fixing this. Not anymore. I watched him from a distance, his every move calculated, but it was too late. He had crossed the line, and there was no coming back from it. The apologies, the pleas for forgiveness, it all meant nothing now. I had waited for this moment, prepared myself for the inevitable. But now that it was here, I realized I didn't feel relief. I felt emptiness. Emily, on the other hand, had completely withdrawn. She was lost in her own guilt, and while part of me almost wanted to forgive her, to embrace the sister I had once known, I couldn't. What she had done wasn't something I could ever erase. And yet, there was something gnawing at me, something I couldn't quite place. The truth was, I was more angry at myself than anyone else. I had allowed this to happen. I had been blind to the signs. And now, I was stuck in this mess, just as much a part of the destruction as Mark and Emily. But there was one final card I hadn't played. One final move that could destroy them both. And it was time to make my move. I arranged the meeting without hesitation. I knew Emily would try to avoid me, but I didn't care anymore. The truth had to come out. The longer I waited, the more I realized I wasn't just doing this for revenge. I was doing it to regain control. To reclaim my life. And I would do whatever it took to make sure Mark and Emily paid the price for their lies. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I called Emily. She didn't pick up at first, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I knew she was avoiding me. But I wasn't going to let her hide anymore. When she finally called me back, I wasted no time. "I know what you did, Emily," I said, my voice low and steady. "And I know what you're still hiding." There was silence on the other end, followed by a shaky breath. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice quivering. "I know about the other man," I said, leaning back in my chair, feeling the weight of my words. "I know you weren't just sleeping with Mark. You were sleeping with someone else, too. And I know exactly who he is." There was a long pause before she finally spoke again. "How do you know?" I smiled, feeling the power surge through me. "It doesn't matter how I know, Emily. What matters is that I'm going to make sure Mark knows. I'm going to make sure he knows everything about you, about the lies, about the way you've been playing him all along." "No," she whispered, her voice desperate. "Please, Sarah. Don't do this." But I could hear the fear in her voice. I knew she was terrified. And that was exactly how I wanted her to feel. "Tell Mark the truth, Emily," I said, my voice cold. "Tell him everything before I do. Because once I expose it, there's no going back. Your life, everything you've built, will come crumbling down." She sobbed on the other end, and for a moment, I almost felt pity for her. Almost. But then I remembered the years of pain she had caused me, the trust she had shattered, and I realized I had no sympathy left to give. "Sarah," she whispered through her tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. I swear, I didn't." I let out a short laugh, the sound bitter in my throat. "I think you've already done enough damage, don't you?" There was no answer. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. But there was also a heaviness in my chest, a weight that wouldn't lift. I had done what I had to do. Now, I had to wait. The next morning, I received the text I had been waiting for. "Emily told me everything," it said. "I don't know what to say. I've messed up beyond belief." It was from Mark. He was finally facing the truth. But even as I read his message, I felt no joy. There was no triumph in this. I had broken them both, but the emptiness remained. I didn't respond. What could I say? I had already said everything that needed to be said. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, the silence in the room suffocating. The game was over. Emily and Mark were both broken. Their lies had been exposed. But where did that leave me? I had sought revenge, but now that it was done, I realized something: revenge didn't bring me peace. It didn't bring me closure. It didn't undo the damage they had caused. So, what now? Later that evening, Mark showed up at my door. He looked different, his face pale, his eyes red from crying. The man who had once seemed so confident, so self-assured, now looked like a shell of himself. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what to say. I've ruined everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've made the biggest mistake of my life." I stood there, staring at him, the weight of his words settling over me. "You can't fix this, Mark," I said quietly. "It's too late for that." His eyes filled with tears, and he reached out, but I took a step back. "I'm done. I'm done with you." I turned and walked away, not looking back. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the hallway behind me, but I didn't stop. I had already made my decision. I was done. I had given Mark his moment of apology, Emily her chance to explain, but nothing could repair what had been shattered. I had done everything I could to exact my revenge, but now, in the aftermath, I was left with nothing but the pieces of a broken family and a deep, aching emptiness. Revenge hadn't given me what I had expected. There had been no satisfaction, no feeling of triumph. There was only silence, and silence was louder than any apology or excuse. It had been weeks since I confronted them, weeks since everything had come to light, and the only thing that had changed was the space between us. Emily and Mark were both avoiding me now, like they were ashamed of the devastation they had caused. They couldn't even look me in the eye anymore. But I wasn't satisfied with that. I didn't want them to be sorry, I wanted them to feel what I felt. So, I waited. Every day felt like a test. I kept busy, work, errands, anything to fill the void. But the truth was, there was nothing that could fill it. Nothing could erase the pain, the anger, the betrayal. I couldn't run away from it anymore. This was my life now, and I had to accept it. Then, one night, everything changed. I was sitting at home, sipping a glass of wine, when my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting another message from Emily or Mark, but it wasn't either of them. The message was from an unknown number. "Sarah," the message began. "You don't know me, but I know everything about you. I know what your sister did. I know what Mark did. And I know who's really behind all of this. I have information that could destroy them both, and you, if you want." I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart was pounding in my chest as I stared at the message. Was this a threat? A warning? I didn't know what to think, but I knew one thing: I couldn't ignore this. I typed back, trying to stay calm. "What do you want?" The response came almost immediately. "I can help you. I can give you everything you need to finally take them down. But there's a price. There's always a price." I stared at the message, my mind racing. Was this a trap? Or was this the answer I had been looking for? Was there more to this story than I had realized? Was someone else pulling the strings, manipulating everything? I didn't know who was behind this, but one thing was clear. This was bigger than I had ever imagined. This was no longer just about Mark and Emily. It was about something deeper, something I had missed all along. I didn't hesitate. I typed back. "Tell me what you know." The next day, I met the mysterious person. It was at a small cafe, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. When they arrived, they didn't sit down. Instead, they handed me an envelope and quickly left, disappearing into the crowd. I opened the envelope, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside were photos, documents, and emails, everything I needed to know about the web of lies that had been spun around me. It was all there. The affair. The manipulation. But what shocked me the most was the final piece of the puzzle. There, at the bottom of the stack, was a photo of my husband and my sister, standing with someone I had never seen before. A man. But this man wasn't just anyone. He was someone important. Someone with power. And in the photo, it was clear that they were working together. I stared at the picture, the weight of it crashing down on me. This wasn't just about a betrayal. It was about control. About manipulation. About people who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes while I was too busy focusing on the wrong things. I felt a mixture of rage and helplessness. All this time, I had thought I was in control. I had thought I was making the choices, but in reality, I had been nothing more than a pawn in someone else's game. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let this consume me. Not now. Not when I was so close to the truth. I knew what I had to do. But I also knew it wouldn't be easy. The people involved were powerful. Dangerous, even. And if I exposed them, I would be opening a door that I couldn't close. But what other choice did I have? I had to take back control. I had to finish what I started. The next few weeks were filled with careful planning. I made contact with people I never thought I would, using the information I had to gather more details. The pieces began to fall into place. It was a slow burn, but it was the only way. I had to be patient. I had to make sure everything was in its place before I struck. And then, the day came. I arranged a meeting with Emily and Mark. I wasn't sure what to expect. Would they deny everything? Would they beg for forgiveness? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for sure: the tables had turned. And now, it was my turn to play the game. When they arrived, they looked at me with suspicion, fear, and guilt. But there was something else in their eyes too. They knew. They knew that I had figured it out. They knew that I had the power to destroy them. And they were afraid. I didn't waste any time. I put the envelope on the table, the photos, documents, and the truth spread out in front of them. "This is it," I said, my voice steady. "This is what you've done. And this is what's going to happen next." They both stared at the evidence in front of them, their faces drained of color. "I know everything," I continued. "And I know who's really behind all of this. I can destroy you both, if that's what I want. But here's the catch." I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. "You have to make a choice. You can keep lying, keep living this pathetic existence. Or you can tell the truth. You can face the consequences of your actions, and maybe, just maybe, you'll have a chance to rebuild your lives." They both sat there, silent, staring at the table. But I saw it. The fear. The realization that everything was about to change. "I'm done," I said, standing up and walking toward the door. "Make your choice. But know this: whatever happens next is on you." I left the room without looking back. The game was over. I had taken back control. And I had made my peace.